Every week we do it, and usually at this time, it is the Rockin Company's Rockin CU, family owned and operated in Colorado, 5 decades, 2 generations, historic and modern masons and general contractors. Build it with rock, build it with Rockin Company, rockinco.com. And we welcome in, as always, the publisher of buffstampede.com, Adam Munsterteiger. His Twitter is at AdamCM777.
Lucky
And
seven.
good warm winter morning, Adam.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Doing
Good,
swell.
good.
Doing swell with spring training. Rockies are still in the pennant race. I'm happy. Speaking of pennant races, we'll talk a little CU basketball before we get done. Big game with UCLA, a team they match up well with. Before we do that, there is a huge shakeup on the coaching staff here at CU. Great to see Darian Hagan, of course, in the mix. Former Colorado star, legendary star. He'll be coaching the running backs. And Colorado has a real stable of running backs now and a lot of talent, including talent coming in. They need a breakthrough here. Is this likely, and is this anything to do with why Hagan is now the running back coach?
Well, I think a big reason why they hired Darian Hagan for the running backs coaching job is the fact that he's a good recruiter. He went out on the road in late December and January, kind of on a trial basis. He hadn't been named the full-time running backs coach yet. And Mike McIntyre's proven in the past he's very methodical with his coaching hires. So I think he wanted to see how Darian Hagan was received on the recruiting trail. Of course, Darian Hagan had a lot of success on the recruiting trail back when he was a running backs coach before, under Dan Hawkins and briefly under Gary Barnett. And he did a good job. He was well received out on the recruiting trail. He was mostly going out to high schools to recruit for 2017, 2018, not necessarily the guys they signed earlier this month. And Darian Hagan wanted to get back on the field. He reached out to Mike McIntyre last summer and said, hey, if there's an opportunity, I'd like to get back on the field. Back when he went more into an operations role was right after his son had committed suicide, so it made sense that he would kind of step back from his responsibilities a little bit there for a while. But he's excited about it. He says he's going to be a little bit less of a screamer on the field now than he was before. And yeah, I think that move had mostly to do with recruiting, but I think it is good to have a full-time running backs coach. In the past, that those responsibilities were split with Clayton Adams, who now moves over to coach the offensive line.
Yeah, tragic about the suicide. Glad that you mentioned that. Gary Bernardi leaves the offensive line. It's taken over by Clayton Adams, who had been coaching the running backs. Again, an area that needed a breakthrough here. But Bernardi, though, 2 years ago seemed to be the hero when the offensive line came together, and it seemed like things were going to work out. And then last year was a disaster area also. Is a breakthrough likely here? And is this a move that came because of the problems that Colorado had last year?
Yeah, I think if Colorado's offensive line plays great last season, there's no question about it that Gary Bernardi keeps that role. But Clayton Adams, kind of an up-and-coming coach on the staff, and this is a more natural coaching fit for him. Clayton Adams was an offensive center at Boise State as a player, was an all-WAC selection, and his first 4 years as an assistant coach was coaching offensive line before he joined Mike McIntyre's staff at San Jose State and started coaching other positions. So I think he wanted to get back on the offensive line, and the fact that they did really struggle on the O-line last year kind of gave Mike McIntyre an opportunity to, promote him is probably the best way to describe it. And I kind of understand there's some CU fans that are going, well, why is Gary Bernardi back? Why didn't they bring in a younger, more energetic guy that could be a really good recruiter to coach the tight ends? And I understand that stance. I think why Mike McIntyre did keep Bernardi on staff was to have a guy that's been around the block a lot and could be somebody that Clayton Adams could lean on if he has questions in terms of his first year at a Power 5 school coaching an offensive line. But, it's definitely a different role for Bernardi, and I think you got to look at that as a demotion just because he had been an offensive line coach for so long.
He's obviously going to fullbacks and tight ends who have been underutilized in this offense, and I don't know if that's going to change or not, but fullbacks, that's tight ends, a very, very marginalized position. How much of this do you think came from pressure from above for changes in Mike McIntyre's staff?
So the situation with the AD and Mike McIntyre, the relationship they have is, of course, they communicate, and there were recommendations that were made by the AD, but there was nothing forced upon Mike McIntyre. In fact, if if the AD was going to force something, I don't think Gary Bernardi would be back. So it's been a good relationship between those two. We saw the same thing a year ago. You know, the AD wanted Toby Ninus gone a year before he was, and Mike McIntyre wasn't ready to make that move. So they haven't strong-armed Mike McIntyre, but they certainly discuss and share their feelings without question.
Do you see a big difference in spring football with all of these changes, all these shifting around?
What will be really interesting is what changes we see offensively with Darren Cheverini coming over and being a co-offense coordinator. With his fingerprints on things, how much more is it going to look like the Texas Tech offense? I'm really curious to see that. They're still kind of in the planning phases right now. They've got a couple more weeks before spring practices start and really have to have a concrete plan in terms of what they're going to do offensively. I think it should be interesting. With Clayton Adams taking over the O-line, a full-time running backs coach, and a new co-offense coordinator, I'd expect to see some changes without question offensively.
Just a quick one on football. Jaleel Winnie moves from linebacker to the offense. Obviously, they're going to have a lot of linebackers who are out hurt. Gilliam Maka hasn't come on campus yet. Drew isn't on campus yet. Olabode, Gambodi, and Severson are the only inside guys there. I was really surprised by this move. Is this a case where they just don't think a Winnie can cut it because they have these good linebackers coming back?
I think it was a case of them seeing what Jaleel Winnie could do late in that Utah game as a dual threat option at quarterback. Now, he's not going to be in the running to be their starting quarterback, but he made a lot of plays in a very short period of time when given a chance in that Utah game. Shoot, if they give him a chance a little bit earlier and maybe have him attempt a pass or two to keep the defense honest, I think they might have won the football game. I think it was more a case of him kind of opening their eyes. Now, I think you put in a couple packages for him, and I think he's going to work a little bit at receiver as well, so to try to get him a little bit more reps. But I think with Drew Lewis coming in at linebacker and hopefully Addison Gillen being a little healthier this year, and Rick Gamboa getting his feet wet last year, Kenneth Olabode, you mentioned Severson. I think they've got some bodies in there. They could always potentially move Owini back to linebacker if need be.
Colorado basketball changing gears here. Dallas Walton, 7-footer from Arvada West, a prospect commits to the Buffs, which is great because next year when Scott leaves, Miller and Gordon really need another big body well beyond the size of Guzenich. How much of a project do you think? I've seen on the website, buffstampede.com, I've seen the footage of Dallas Walton. You guys do a great job showing us all that stuff. How much of a project do you think he is? Can he contribute right away?
It's going to be tough to say. Yeah, he is a project from the sense that he's missed a lot of basketball in high school. He suffered a torn ACL in his left knee twice, both late during his sophomore year, and he's getting late in the rehab process, getting ready for his junior year, and it tears again. And so he misses his entire junior season. Obviously, a lot of club basketball missed in there as well, which if he's healthy, you don't know. I mean, is this a guy that would have blown up on the AAU circuit and would have been a four-star guy? You just don't know because of those knee injuries. He's come back this year, and he says he's only still at about 75-80%. So even he's admitting he's not at his full self, and he's doing pretty well this year. Obviously, Colorado competition is what it is, but he's averaging 17 and 10. The one thing I've heard on him is that he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. Even Dallas admits that, so that will be one thing. I do think project is probably a reasonable word to put at him, but he has put on some good weight. He was really, really, really skinny as a sophomore before those knee injuries. He was about 175. Now he's at least up to 215.
Well, that is a good sign. We got 30 seconds left. UCLA is a good matchup. You and I have talked. I've been talking to you 6 months about how well the Buffs match up with UCLA since the summer. Any predictions on today's game in the last 20 seconds?
It all depends on Bryce Alford. If that kid gets hot, UCLA kind of goes as he goes, and they got to find a way to keep him from getting hot. And I think they've got a pretty good chance for that road upset if they can do that.
This is the breakthrough game for them, and you are Adam Munsterteiger, BuffStampede.com, must reading. Thank you, Adam. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Back.